Welcome, everybody. Great to have you tonight. If this is your first time to a Mobilize Recovery virtual series, this is part of a year-long um, virtual series, workshops, called the Interconnected Recovery Community. And each month, we really work to bring in folks to talk about how they got involved in the recovery advocacy movement, talk about different ways that people have come into this. And this month, we are focusing on this is the 34th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so we are focusing on the recovery message being accessible to everyone. We have American Sign Language tonight. In addition, you also have the closed captions that you should see at the bottom of your screen. If not, you can enable them with the button on the bottom. And with that, I want to introduce Tootle, who we met at Mobilize Recovery in Vegas 2 or 3 years ago now. And some of my favorite conversations and places of learning really came from my conversations with Tootle that year. And I appreciate when we catch each other on the phone and talk about music, talk about recovery, talk about advocacy. And so with that, I'm going to pass things over to Tootle, and he's going to run the show tonight. So thank you all for being here.
Run the show. Y'all in trouble. He gonna let me run something. Good evening. My name is Stanso Tootle, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me, it's been over 34 years since the last time I used any mind-altering, mood-changing substance. And I am an unapologetically black, blind, male, and as you can already tell, I stutter. And so, welcome in, and we hope that this turns out to be a informative and a eye-opening. Ooh, that's a nice word. An eye-opening experience for you all, and it will get you to thinking. As Aaron said, tomorrow we will celebrate the 34th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And also, it is important. Well, we think it is important that we try to integrate the discussion about accessibility and disabilities into the recovery conversation. And I have a few of my close friends here, and we're going to kind of just let this thing flow and see how it turns out. We got some structure, but yet at the same time, my experience have shown me that things go a whole lot more heartfelt when it is spontaneous. But the main thing we would like to leave you all with is that in order to truly make recovery uh, a uh, a welcoming thing for anyone who deals with addiction, we need to address the accessibility issues. And we are going to be talking tonight from the standpoint of people who have sensory disabilities, blindness, or vision and hearing. And we're going to start it off by letting my friend Nikki tell you all a little bit about her, and then we will pass it to Lori. And good evening, everybody. It's on you, Nikki.
Hi everyone. I'm Nikki McAnally. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm using a sign language interpreter tonight to voice for me, so thank you for that. I really have enjoyed meeting Tootle last month. I have really appreciate the chance to get to talk with him again in person. That's so much better. I'm actually an owner of an accessibility company called Nikki Integrated Networking Consulting. And we are just trying to, increase accessibility for deaf people with different organizations and having people focus on those. So that's something I hold very dear due to my own life and personal experiences. And I'm very, very excited to be here tonight working with you all and meeting with you all. So I'll turn it over to Laura.
Hello, everyone. This is Laura, and I have an interpreter voicing for me as well. I'm happy to be here. I'm in person in dual recovery, and I am working with Nikki in the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Consulting. And I am certified as an addiction recovery coach from the state of Massachusetts. I'm looking forward to talking with all of you and coming to be here with all of you tonight. Thank you for having me. I guess I will pass this back over to Chandra then.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chandra Monette. I am a person in long-term recovery from substance use and mental health challenges. I am from Austin, Texas, and I have been working with Nikki and Laura most recently doing some projects on accessibility consulting with different organizations and independently in Texas as well. I'm also a peer support specialist in Texas at an organization called Communities for Recovery.
Okay. And Evan?
Yes. My name is Evan Robertson. I'd like to thank you guys for allowing me to be here tonight. I am a person in long-term recovery. I entered recovery into 2021, a scared little boy, basically. And since the time I've entered recovery, I found a calling, and that was to help others just like me. I no schooling, graduated high school, college was difficult the first semester, so I dropped out because the books weren't accessible. And I've been kind of floating between jobs over the last 20 years, but substantial loss of vision back in 2016 left me with 2350 vision acuity. And leading into my recovery, I did not have a clue that I could live life or even be independent. I was so scared. I was going through a divorce and dealing with my substance use at the same time. So, my biggest thing is coming in here. I wanted to let y'all know that I found the strength and the encouragement and the support of people around me and other state agencies that I am proud to say that as of 4 weeks ago, I am a registered certified peer recovery specialist in the state of Virginia. And I just completed my very first term with AmeriCorps, which would actually under Recovery Corps, and I had been placed at this lovely foundation in Lynchburg, Virginia, called the Up Foundation. So it stands for Unlimited Potential. And I'm just trying to use that as a platform to be there for the next Evan that walks in the door that has no idea how to be independent. And all that time, I have become 100% independent. Have my own apartment. I can get transportation all by myself anywhere I want to go. I am a father to my daughter today, and this thing is possible, and there is a lot of hope in the future.
Okay, thank y'all. And so Laura, let's tell us when you think about the stigmas that you encountered when you came into recovery or when you was seeking recovery as it relates to your sensory disability and also the stigma you ran into about even seeking re, recovery if the stigma of searching out recovery entered the picture of, uh, with you.
This is Laura. Yeah, wow. Hmm. So looking back, like for me going into detox, I went in, and I do want to clarify that I can speak and hear with my hearing aids. Without my hearing aids, I can hear nothing. So to seek out that care was a bit challenging because of the stigma of who I am as a deaf person. And I feel more, I guess, shame, but I just kept telling myself, go ahead, you can do it. And then I did go in and thought, at that point, what's worse, I couldn't find an interpreter. So I had to just go ahead and use my voice and SimCom would, and then I did kind of give it some thought, and the community and the stigma of the shame going into detox and the recovery center. And when I left, that's when I just decided to support my community. And, when I see that stigma, I will say something. So, it's like see something, say something. So I definitely do support that. Now, I know I'm a little bit nervous with this panel because this is my first time. So maybe if you guys can help me out, I would appreciate it.
Well, when did you go in? When did you seek uh, help for your uh, substance abuse?
I actually reached out to my own family members and said, where do I go? So they told me to go to the treatment place, and so I said okay, and I went in. I did find that I had to advocate for myself to be able to get an interpreter, but I would be there all day with no interpreter, so I would have to, try to reach out to them and please speak one at a time, trying to get everyone to do that, and because I didn't have my hearing aid on or whatever, like even if there was a fire alarm, they would just leave me there, and my roommate would have to be like, hey, 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 you need to get out, the fire alarm, because I couldn't hear it. So, they just didn't understand that. So, but it's definitely is still a struggle, and there is still the stigma, and there's still barriers to communication access.
Nikki, same question about the stigma, or 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 did you encounter any, or did you bring any with you when you reached out?
Yes, yes. And this is Nikki signing here. But yes, for me, there were different layers, due to my background in accounting and working for an interpreting agency previously. And as an accountant working for other organizations, seeing how much my interpreters cost the company. So that entered into the financial stigma for me. That was an extra burden that I carried. That was also a challenge that I needed to get rid of when I looked for help, because I know those of us in recovery, in active addiction, we make all these excuses. We have so many excuses. So that was a big excuse of mine. Oh, I'm too expensive. I'm not worth asking for help. So, you know, I just kept drinking. So I had to convince myself that that was a stigma that I had to remove for myself. Not only that, but when I actually did go to get help, I had to use interpreters that I might already have known. Or, you know, plus I can speak for myself as well, but a lot of the time I would ask the interpreters to, you know, at the detox center or at the rehab center, they'll say, oh, you don't need an interpreter. You can read lips, you can speak for yourself. But I would miss out on so much information having to depend on that, maybe like 10 to 30% of the information. And, you know, people, if they don't look at me when they're speaking. So that was a big challenge, having to convince those people that I needed that and convince myself that I did deserve the help. So there were a lot of layers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Evan, what was your
Yeah.
experience?
So, you know, in 2000, towards the end of 2020, you know, I was in a really bad place, and for a while I'd been a follower, um, and I felt like an invalid, and you know, I got in some legal trouble, and I ended up, I was all by myself 4 hours away from what I called home. Nobody would help me, and you know, the only thing that I knew to do was go in and get myself checked into a hospital and get off the streets and address my mental health. And I know, you know, leading up to that, just a little quick background, that it would always hurt me. I have vision well enough to see some things, and the one thing that I could see that always hurt me the most when it comes to stigma is when I would use my red and white cane, people would stop and stare, and it made me feel less than. It made me feel like a circus, um, and you know, and that ultimately led to me not using that red and white cane because I didn't want I didn't want people to you know, look at me as any different. And I've actually done a really good job my whole life of hiding my vision impairment, and I actually do it. I don't mean to. I just function at such a high level. You know, there's nothing I can't do. But when I got into recovery, the one thing that I did not know about was self advocacy. I did not know how to self disclose. And you know, and that can be really difficult, especially when I was in early recovery. um I'm sitting at home, and I was moved in with my dad, who is an alcoholic, who actively drank every night. It was the only place I had to go. um you know, transportation was a major issue. I had to depend on previous relationships with other stints in recovery to get me to a meeting. You know, and that ultimately led me to the sponsor that I have today. And you know, through, you know, keep one day at a time and learning things, you know, the most crucial aspects of my recovery has been the Department for Blind and Vision Impaired in the state of Virginia. It has been very critical in my success and my independence. You know, without them, I would not have learned how to self-advocate or self-disclose. But those are two of the most important things, and knowing when to do which. You know, that can be a challenge sometimes as well. But you know, as far as the stigma, I keep trying to you know, show people that, you know, there's nothing that I can't do besides drive a car. You know, there's nothing I can't do if I put my mind to it. And you know, and when people crack jokes about me not being able to see and stuff, you know, and that does hurt. But you know, that's on them. You know, when people call me, you know, blind and stuff like that, and they're trying to joke and be funny. You know, I've just learned to joke and laugh it off with them. But you know, it's still there's still a lot of stigma, and especially being a low vision, you know, drug addict, a recovery and drug addict. You know, you're already looked at as less than in our community, in our society. And you know, so it's tough to overcome those, but there is a lot of stigma around both areas of my disability and my recovery. So
Okay. And you bring up a very good point about uh, the advocacy part. And I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. It'll start with a C. But first, tell me what your name is first before.
Hi, Stancil. I'm Chandra.
Kendra, I got it. Okay, so instead of you answering that same question, let's take it one step further. Uh, when you came into recovery, uh, was did you have any advocacy skills, and if you did, do you think that your advocacy skills kind of made it easier for you to navigate uh, this recovery journey early on?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. So I do believe I had some advocacy skills when I first came into recovery. So my most recent recovery journey began in 2013. And that's when I really noticed my hearing loss. So I'm not entirely sure when it started to really impact my life, because I was in a haze and a cloud of daily substance use for so many years that I didn't notice when it happened. And so when I noticed it was when I became abstinent and started trying to go to meetings. I wanted to find a fellowship, find a community of people and support. And it was very difficult. And I could hear if I was in a room with one or two people, and everybody did the hot potato that Nikki described, where we take turns talking one at a time. But as soon as there was background noise, I would have to interrupt these newfound friends and advocate, right, for myself and say, excuse me, can you guys please stop talking over each other? Can you please talk one at a time? And it was very, very uncomfortable, because I've still recently come to realize I think it's easier for me to advocate with other people for things on a systems level than it is for me to advocate for myself as an individual when I'm struggling on a daily basis. So I think the skills are there, but when it comes to implementing them, every day is not like every other day, and every situation and every group of people doesn't feel the same. Sometimes I feel stronger and more capable than other days. So I think I had some skills there, but I'm continuing to build them. And they're not always perfect, but I'm feeling better about pushing through the process when it's uncomfortable. So
Okay. I think for me personally, if I wouldn't have already been a skilled advocate by the time I sought out recovery, my journey would have been a whole lot harder. But I've been involved in civic advocacy all of my life, and I've also been involved in disability advocacy with the National Federation of the Blind since I was a teenager. So by the time I found recovery, uh, I was skilled and I had grown accustomed to uh, pushing, pushing. So, Nikki, uh, how does it? All right, and well, let's back up. I think one of the major premises, one of the major points about mobilized recovery is the community recovery movement and community services outside, where the service deliveries outside in the community, like recovery centers or day programs or whatever. So, Nikki, how is it, and as a deaf person, if you go to a organization or a agency, and there is no accommodations for people who are deaf. Kind of walk us through, since you are a advocate and since you got your own business. If you were to walk into a center that offers recovery services, but there are no accommodations for a deaf person, what kind of conversation would you have with the staff members there without throwing chairs and stuff?
Yeah, that is a challenge. That's a big challenge for sure. Really, again, Chandra did mention that depending on the day and the energy that you actually have and the space you have to self-advocate. So for me, as a person seeking support, just, we face that challenge being told, come back tomorrow with an interpreter or come back next week with an interpreter. That in itself alone is just enough to make me give up. So that really is a big challenge, and where a strength is really important to have those deaf peer recovery coaches, to have that support and that group and that community to understand those challenges. So if now I knowing what I know now, and the self-advocacy skills that I have learned, through referrals or work with a department that has deaf services, and I refer them to an organization like mine or other different organizations that are out there. Really, the big issue is, in the recovery space, as a deaf person, it doesn't matter with an interpreter or without an interpreter. Really, it's difficult to make connections with people. That is a big key. And it's not the only reason why recovery works. I mean, that's one of the main reasons, because of the connections with other people. And if you have a barrier to those connections, then what's the point? It's like really just a waste, so a waste of so many things. So it's really important in that space to be able to have deaf people go in and have staff there who does understand the challenges that we face. Also, to be able to look to face themselves, because one thing we face is hearing people who haven't met another deaf person, and they're very uncomfortable with communicating that way sometimes. So, or they won't want to communicate at all. So that leads to isolation of the person who is going in to find that help and support. And that's another layer of trauma that we've experienced growing up. And that's one thing that leads to our addiction, is the loneliness and the isolation. So making an effort to reach out to us and connect to us, and just don't leave that entire burden on us, because we already can't hear so much, and we have to do so much of the work going into the recovery center, and the staff expects us to advocate for ourselves, and lots of us just haven't learned those skills yet. So, and it just leads to a dead end situation, and it's crazy. So the simple thing is really just, the education. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Hey,
Edmund.
Toodle, I wanted to
Oh,
mention that Bourne is now on the, this is Aaron. I wanted to mention
okay.
that Bourne is now on the panel, if you want to include him in the conversation as well.
Okay. Good evening, Bourne. And matter of fact, you come in right on time. Uh, the question that we are talking about now is well, first, after you kind of introduce yourself, what is your experience, if you've had any, when you have entered a recovery space and there are no accessibility options there? what would you suggest that uh organization should do? And while you introduce yourself, tell us what your disability is also, please, sir.
Fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Bourne, and I'm blind, legally blind. I'm blind. I have been since um, 1985. Let me turn this voiceover off. Since 1985, um, due to a condition called pseudotumor cerebri. But I mean, the situation that I've come across several times, whether it's whether it's a meeting, going to an NLA meeting, or going to an agency, where there wasn't any access. Matter of fact, I had a job back in last year in July. I had to resign because although they had George, although I had a system, Jaws, the system itself has a feature called voice activation that wasn't enabled, and it was becoming frustrating with me and other workers that had to assist me, and it's got to the point where I resigned. But that's why I'm glad to hear the participants in this group so far know that there's barriers and challenges that we meet, but with assistance, with help, with advocacy, advocating for ourselves and others, that these situations can be, we can overcome. I just want to ask before I pass it back over that, although I've been blind since '85, I've been able to manage to. I'm a social worker, master level social worker. I'm also a master level PACE Act credentialed alcohol and substance abuse counselor, and I'm also a Server P. So one thing when this happened, I was devastated for about a year, and then somewhere along the line, the blessing was that I was already in NAA, and so they kind of carried me. But somewhere along the line, after I felt sorry for myself, I realized that life goes on, and nobody's going to want for me more than I want for myself. So I also, like I heard the young gentleman say, that there was a state agency that gave me an assistance, and I was able to go back to school to get my education allowance for my case. I got my bachelor's, my master's, and some other things along the line. So we can do anything within reason. And so I don't let anybody dictate who I am and where I can go. That depends on what I see in myself. And and that's the message that I want to pass on to anybody else.
Okay, thank you. Edmund, the lack we are currently living in a time of virtual meetings and a whole lot of digital access, and almost everything is digital now. If you were to go to a recovery-based center or organization, trying to access recovery tools, do you think that with your disability, have you ran across where most places are accommodating, or are you asked about, well, can you come back later, or do people wind up scratching their head trying to figure out how to accommodate you? And what what suggestions would you offer our audience to kind of uh, have them go back to wherever they work at or volunteer at and look at their setup? So when someone like you come into their place, they won't be made to feel like maybe recovery is not for me.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. You know, it's been my experience that usually once I self-disclose, and this is really generalized, when I self-disclose, usually somebody is there, especially when it comes to like paperwork. I'm gonna use an example, you know, going to the doctor, you know, and I have to do paperwork. I simply self-disclose and they help me right there. Now getting on into my recovery and stuff, and I remember my first obstacle was I took I was enrolled in the 72-hour peer recovery course that's mandated by the state of Virginia to start you on your journey to getting certified. And I was actually you know, when I walked in the room, they had 3-ring binders on the table with you know, the whole curriculum. And of course, you know, at the time I didn't have the technology that I have now. The only thing I had was been issued a computer from the Department for Blind and Vision Impaired, and you know, I had it set up to some accessibility stuff. But fortunate for me, all I did was self-disclose to my instructor, and he dropped everything he was doing right there, and he went and put the digital copy on my computer. And I would like to say that happens in all places, but I can almost guarantee it does not. It just so happens that this one time this person was particularly prepared. I know for a fact that where I work right now, if somebody walks in, we don't have any accessibility. You know, we don't have accessibility because we're on the 3rd floor with no elevator. You know, for people that, you know, struggle even with mobility issues. You know, so I've been advocating, you know, for you know, getting stuff, and I spoke about technology. My biggest suggestion is if you're low vision or even blind. I know a lot of people cringe at the price tag, but I have an iPad Pro 13-inch, and that iPad Pro allows me to do any task during my day, from going to the mailbox, getting a letter, opening it, and or even if you guys have iPhones or Android devices, there is a program on there called Seeing AI, and
Mhm.
that Seeing AI, it reads to you. It can identify currency. It can identify people. It can describe the scenery that you're in. I really encourage everybody to download that. That is really essential for vision impaired people, and two. When I This actually happened about 6 months ago, and it really got to me. But we're sitting in a staff meeting on a Monday morning, and this gentleman walks in looking for help. Well, he was completely deaf, and come to find out he was vision impaired as well. So it made it very difficult. And of course, you know, everybody hands them to me, and that's what I want, because I want to be there to advocate. And so the first thing that I figured is like, how am I going to be able to effectively communicate with this guy? You know, and then the obstacle that I ran into was I had the, you know, the bold lined double spaced paper with a special marker that I can see, and that's how we communicated. And it got to a point where I actually had to bring another coworker in to read the stuff that he was writing down, because I was getting to a point where I struggled reading it. But I know for me, I was not prepared to handle a participant or a client that's visually or that's hearing impaired. And I really took that personally because I wanted to do everything I could for this gentleman, and I couldn't, but I could see when he realized, when he found the correlate, or not the correlation, but what we could relate on. His face lit up, and I could just tell his whole demeanor changed, like he felt he wasn't alone, and I kept trying to tell him there was hope and stuff, but yeah, there's there's a lot of opportunities for accessibility in recovery programs, treatment centers. But the thing that I do want to say is today, schooling, like digital copies and everything, a lot of the major universities, everything offer ebooks. And with my technology, it allows me to do, to go back to school. I actually start college August 19th and at Liberty University. And I do not have any anxiety because I've been supplied with the tools that I need. So it is out there. Sometimes we have to ask for them, but most of the time people are not prepared to handle a situation with any of us being visually impaired, blind, or hearing impaired.
Okay, thank you. Lori, and then I want two more of you all to chime in on this after Laura. Laura, do you think that your recovery pathway would have been different if you would have had a deaf peer supported with you from the beginning, or do you think that even matters?
Oh, a very good question. And yes, absolutely. This is why actually when I do my work, I give back and support that mentoring relationship. To be honest, if the place doesn't have communication access, I will educate them. And yeah, it would have made a huge difference if I'd had a deaf mentor with me. I would not have felt all alone and on my own. Absolutely.
So,
I can add more to that, but that was the point. If I'd had that mentor with me, I would have felt like someone that I could feel the same with. So for me, even for me to work with a person and support them, I do feel like, I want to support them. And if I'd had someone as a deaf person to go alongside me through that process, I would have that sameness with the person as a deaf person and that understanding, and I would not have felt so lonely and so on my own. And I would have felt like I had that advocate, not just that, but now working in the field and supporting all these other individuals, that's my community, so yeah, it's their community too.
can I jump in?
And this is Nikki. I just wanted to add something. I just wanted to add that, for myself, I would have included, or I would have benefited as well. When I went to rehabilitation for my my time, I was lucky that there was another person there. Unfortunately, they were hearing peers and it wasn't a good group. I tried to get help in a previous group that wasn't successful. The staff people there weren't, I mean, really, they didn't seem to care about making connections with me, about including me. Luckily, the next group did, but both of those experiences felt like, I couldn't, I wish I could have stayed longer, but I couldn't. And a lot of my deaf peers are looking for help and they're in and out of treatment because they can't make it through the first 2 weeks. It's just so lonely and so difficult. So having a peer absolutely would have made a difference. And then another example, I did have an interpreter for my 30-day plus at that treatment center. That interpreter was a male interpreter, and he did sexually harass me in sign language in front of other people. If I would have had a deaf peer there, they would have caught that. As a deaf person, I knew that it was going to be extremely difficult to find an interpreter to replace that one if I had complained. So I basically put up with that harassment for the entire 30-day period because I felt like I had no support to help me get out of that or to advocate for myself. As a woman and a deaf person, that intersectionality also is difficult. And so that's a benefit of having peers in the treatment center, is being able to help address those issues.
Okay. One more. I'm sorry, but we're gonna run out of time. And Aaron only gave us 1 hour. But uh, let's Born. If you would have had a blind peer, do you think that your recovery journey early on would have been different?
For me, I honestly, I would say probably not, because when this happened to me, I was devastated, and I definitely can say that I was in denial. I didn't understand. I went blind. I was going blind. I didn't understand why, and I guess I didn't want to admit it. I always felt that my sight was going to come back, and I definitely, I stigmatized myself, and I definitely would have felt um, sorry for myself. So for me, I would probably say no. Looking back is foolish, because um, when I finally reached out for help to the New York State Commission for the Blind, um, my counselor was so sweet, and she helped me out in so many ways that I think it was only at that point that I was um, ready and willing and able for support. So in the beginning, when this happened to me, no, I was in a negative place about what happened to me, and in my denial.
Okay. Normally, when I host my weekly show, I get somebody to read the chat box area. So before we get out of here, Aaron, is there any questions or any comments in the chat box area there, brother?
I don't see any right now, but it is okay to, if you if you want to go over that hour, obviously you can. I think that the conversation's engaging and people are, and people sharing their experiences is great, but I don't see, I'll let you know if I see a question in the chat.
Okay, well then what I would like to do, since you're gonna give us a little bit more time, do anybody in the audience have any questions or any comments for any person in particular, or since Aaron is giving us a little bit of time, do anybody have any kind of question that they would like to hear a couple of the panelists respond to?
Yes, and if you can virtually raise your hand, I can take you off of mute. I'll be able to see you if you use the little button that says raise hand. If
I
somebody
won't. Laugh, Aaron, laugh.
total. All right, we have, I'm gonna pronounce this wrong, so I'll let Brisha introduce herself. Here we go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brice Diarte Cortez. My question would be for the panel, if I was wondering, being from the recovery community, and you mentioned all these barriers that exist, would you say that the stigma or the lack of cooperation? Did you see it more among maybe the staff of recovery organizations, or more so from peers from the recovery community?
Thank you. Nikki, go for it.
Me? Yeah, well, I would just like to add, really, yeah, unfortunately, the staff, wow, it takes a lot of patience for hearing people, well, with their people with their hearing intact. It takes a lot of patience for them to slow down, and they don't know at the recovery center. Those people are just going so fast, and so it takes a lot of patience for the staff to be able to deal with us, and so that leads to some frustration. Like, for example, when I was in detox, and it was actually my first time in detox, I went in there for alcohol, and the nurse gave me medication, and it was during COVID. She was wearing a mask. I couldn't understand her. During COVID, the mask thing for deaf people caused so much extra anxiety, like all the anxiety, because we can't understand, have no control over my access, no ability to lip read. So, I asked them to give me the name of the medication, and the nurse I guess, she didn't write English very well, so she refused to write it down for me. And then what she gave me, the medicine, I thought I was going to die that night. I thought I was going to die because they may misunderstood and maybe thought that I was, maybe was using heroin, and they gave me medication for that. So I was terrified that I was going to die that night. And it was so scary for me. So, and then I brought that to the next day to the staff, and they just didn't care. It seemed like they just ignored it or minimized my trauma. So that really, the staff going in as a person looking for help and expecting the staff to be able to understand what I'm going through. And I found that no one understood, again, what I was going through. So, I mean, it was just really another way that I was just completely taken advantage of in that situation.
Hmm.
Hmm.
There are two.
Evan? Oh,
I was gonna
okay. All right.
yeah,
All right.
there's two more. Two
okay.
more. Sorry, Toodle.
All right. We'll go to the next question there. The
Okay.
person got another question.
Leah's going to ask a question, and then there's a question in the chat that I'll read once Leah has gone.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for
Good evening.
sharing with us. Is there like a national website where an interpreter is available, like last minute, to maybe video call with somebody? Just wondering, just in the case that one is needed.
Chandra. Matter of fact, I was gonna kind of ask that same question, Liz. Leah, we must be on the same wavelength. Is there some type of free technology that maybe could sit in instead of a live ASL interpreter that that anybody could have access to? Chandra.
Thank you. That's a very good question, and it would be wonderful if there was. I would have to say that there is video remote interpreting, and it's not as reliable because of technology, maybe not having great internet access, not being able to see, like right now, you can't see my hands, right? So maybe the full message is not being conveyed. And at a medical scenario or a high stress scenario, like when someone is in treatment, it's not ideal. However, if it were an emergency and it were to get someone to hold over until live interpreters could be there, It could be used in a pinch. Free and worldwide access, though, no, unfortunately, none that I know of.
Okay, so what should I go look for if,
And this
well,
is Nikki. I wanted to
okay,
make a comment.
Yeah,
okay.
please, Nicole, add to that.
Yeah, so just to add to Chandra's response, right now, there's a number of different companies working on developing signing. You know, there's technology to make videos where there's a deaf person signing, and they're trying to do sign to text. And there's a lot of challenges with that. We're not there yet. The technology's not there yet. But things are being worked on in that space right now, but at the moment, no. Really, live interpreters are are what we need, and that requires money. That requires organizations to sign off and create billing policies for last minute interpreters. There are several organizations that have like QRC codes. You can scan that with a phone that can connect to an interpreter, but that requires a contract because, you know, who's going to pay for those services, and those services are pricey.
So, so Laura, would it be disrespectful if someone came into my center and since I don't know ASL, would it be disrespectful if I try to communicate with them uh through writing things out, or should I ask them before I just automatically start writing on a piece of paper trying to communicate with them?
Hmm.
This is Laura. You know, it really depends on the person who walks in. Uh, for example, for myself, I can read and write English. I could write back and forth with you. I can speak with my hearing aids. I can sign and speak at the same time. But if there were a different deaf individual who came in, you know, you could start with writing a note, but keep it short, keep it brief. It depends. A lot of deaf people have had language deprivation. So you want to make sure that you're not writing, you know, paragraphs. But if there's a deaf person who themselves starts to write paragraphs, okay, well, then you'll know where their language stands and what you can do in response. And then also another option would be just to text back and forth with that deaf person. Most deaf people do know how to text. You know, so you could just share the same phone and text or text back and forth between devices, but handwritten notes. Now I'm actually thinking about it again as access for all people, not only for deaf people, but just handwritten notes sometimes aren't as accessible. So, you know, that's a really good question.
Okay, thank you. All right, Aaron, what's the question in the chat box there, brother?
It looks like Chandra wanted to jump in, so I wanted
Oh,
to.
okay.
I just wanted to add that the very first thing you said, Stancil, about asking was really what I loved hearing you say, was just asking that person what their preference is, because I think so many people have so many different preferences, and the point is that you're making a connection, you're making an effort, you're making a gesture, and that can go a long way to just saying, do you prefer pen and paper? Or if not, be prepared to offer a backup if they say no, they want an interpreter. But the fact that you asked, rather than, I've seen people just assume, oh no, I can't communicate with this person, and they just turn and walk away and don't try. And so you asking and trying is huge. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandra. So the question in the chat is from Michelle in Alaska. How can I find a way to ensure information is accessible when posting social media events? I have access to Canva, only I cannot find anything that would be helpful in Canva. So does anybody, it sounds like she was asking if there's any tools when hosting social media or creating flyers for events?
Evan, you want to tackle that?
You know, I've actually personally I've tried to use Canva, and it wasn't on my technology. I couldn't use it. I think that you know, I'm just trying to think of a thing. You know, I have had to get several team members to make up a flyer, and for instance, we just hosted a game at our minor league uh, baseball stadium, and you know, we had a flyer and everything, and we posted it to our social media. And I guess if you know, I can't see where there was any, we didn't do anything special with it. We just posted it. And you know, if you have, you know, your phone or even that app I was talking about, seeing AI, or a tablet or something, something as simple as pulling your phone out and opening your camera and looking through your camera. That's how I read a lot of things when I don't have my tablet with me. And then you can do that on social media, you know, where you're like, if you're, well, I know you probably don't have, you're probably looking at social media on your device. But I haven't found anything really that makes it accessible other than just external devices.
Okay, well, let me answer that, since I manage by 5 social media things. Uh, the main thing is, if you post a picture, describe it in text. And like Evan mentioned, CNAI, the app that I mainly use that allow me to post and is this thing called Be My Eyes. And it will use AI, and AI will describe the picture, and you just put that alt text in the body of the text of the social media uh, program that you are using. And Be My Eyes is free. And like I say, I manage 5 social media uh, uh, accounts, and everybody else is cited, and they be coming to me. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but just put text with the picture, and that covers it.
Thank you. That's amazing. I've learned so much, and I just want to give a shout out and say how grateful that I am that all of you have overcome so much, and how sad it makes me that that we're in this state in our world, to where we're not addressing the needs of all people. And thank you so much for sharing your stories and just experiences. Even in the organization where I work, I brought it to their attention. Like, we have a ramp, but nobody can get up it because it's like rickety and just not helpful. And then when they get around the corner, like, it just doesn't make any sense. And when I bring it up, you know, it's funding because we're a nonprofit. So we need to get funds for that. And it's just like, okay, what small little things can I do to be more accommodating? And that was what I have been working on recently, is trying to make social media. And I'm just like, I don't know, but thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you all for being here. Amazing.
Thank you. And before we get out of here, I want all 5 of you all to answer this question. Do you think that if whenever a disabled person reaches out or go and try to participate in some type of recovery pathway, should there be some time set aside to allow that person to talk about the impact of their what impact their disability and their recovery pathway has made in their life, or if it causes them any extra, or do they need some special time to talk about that issue with an empathetic person? And all 5 of y'all can answer that, and that will close us out unless Aaron got something to say.
Yeah, I feel like you just spoke to me. Before getting into recovery, I didn't realize until about a year and a half, 2 years down the road, that a big reason for my using was the fact that I hadn't dealt with my disability. And I was really fortunate to have, I had I was a narcotic drug user, and so I chose the pathway of Narcotics Anonymous. And um, for me, I realized now, after doing some things, that and I found this out on my own, was my using got worse and worse and worse the less I felt a part of in the community or in my family, or even the fact, just I had a big insecurity of being an invalid. Like I was a burden on everybody, and that led to more using, because and the more I would use, the more I would try to I would try to get numb that feeling that I was feeling, and so it was actually really important. And that was a really freeing conversation that I was able to have with my sponsor. And if as an empathetic person, standing beside somebody in recovery, me sharing that with somebody, I would hope that they could relate to that and then open up earlier in recovery than I did, because that was a really big step in sustaining long-term recovery for me, was really accepting and addressing the disability was really one of the underlying factors of my substance use.
This is Chandra. I think for me personally, it's been very important to have safe places and safe people to talk about the connection between my recovery and my hearing loss. Those are not always the same places. So some of the places where I get support for my substance use and mental health recovery, I get some really great support in those areas. And then when I share about the impact of my hearing loss, I start to feel like I'm over explaining, or they're frustrated, and it starts to kind of not be the right place or the right people, right? So I've kind of learned that all people can't be all things, but that it is important to address all of those things for me. And they affect each other, they impact each other. And sometimes I get the most amazing support from strangers or places that I wouldn't expect it. So I'm learning to be more comfortable with just sharing my experience with people in general, and kind of let life surprise me with where the support comes from.
I can go next. This is Laura. I have a similar experience to Chandra. A long-term safe place to have that discussion. And really, it depends on the organization, it depends on the situation. So it's just really important to have that safe place. And I do need to go soon, but I do really appreciate being here. And I look forward to working with all of you again together. Thank you.
This is Nikki. I can go next. So this is Nikki signing. And yes, so I just want to emphasize that the discussion about going into treatment, and it depends on who we're having these discussions with, right? My childhood was full of medical professionals who did not share the same disability as me. They told me how I should be feeling about my disability, how I should be addressing and interacting with other people, right, who are responding to my disability. So I think the discussion between myself and whoever that was, whether that's a peer or someone who's similar, I think that it needs to be with somebody who's trained and educated, and even then it can be sticky. But yes, I do think it's worth that discussion for anyone who has additional accessibility needs, to have that discussion prior to going into treatment on both sides so that you can meet and manage expectations. And it's really important rather than just sort of sweeping things under the rug. You really, because a lot has been swept under the rug. There's been a lot of misunderstandings, frustrations, and, we learn a lot about resentment that throughout the treatment process, and resentment can build, and that happens, and it's important to have those discussions to address that.
Okay, my name is Bourne, and I'm grateful for Narcotics Anonymous and NA for being in my life. When when my condition started in October of '85, I had been a member of both programs.
Hey. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
It's wrapping up right now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I just want to share it so that I had been a member of NANA from April. So I had a support system in place, although I didn't see I was going to help. But because, like Aaron said, because of sponsoring and a little support system in that little network of people, peers that I had in place, they were able to almost carry me, through that time of devastation and traumatic experience. And I'm ever so grateful for that. And even with the New York State Commission of Law, that put me in contact with other agencies that were able to accommodate my situation and help me move on with my life. So yes, it's very important and almost critical to have, like I heard young lady say, a safe and encouraging environment, to help the person, be able to manage and move on, with their disability.
Okay. Did Evan, did you go?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We apologize for running over. We hope you all had an eye-opening or an aha moment. And hopefully you will look at some things different and maybe even ask some additional questions or do some research. I think Aaron is going to include everybody's contact info in the
Yes.
link when it goes out. And we appreciate you all for coming in. We'd like to thank my friends on the panel. And hopefully we will have some more conversations. And Aaron, thank you and Mobilize Recovery for giving us this opportunity.
Well, I want to thank you, Tootle, for putting this panel together, and I want to thank all the panel members. I know a couple of you is your first time jumping on a workshop, and so I know that we all got the nerves out pretty quick. So thank you. And if any of the panel members have additional resources and materials, we would make sure that that comes my way or get it to Tootle, because we have a Google Classroom where we put resources on different topics for each topic and workshop that we do. And so if you have any additional materials that people can dive deeper around how to make sure their organization or recovery spaces are more accessible, please get that over, and we'll put it all in one spot so anybody interested in that topic can just dive right in. So thank you all so much. Have a good night. Be safe. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Okay.